The silence in the theater was absolute. More than 3,000 people held their breath as they watched a thin boy, only 12 years old, walk alone onto the main stage of the Grand Metropolitan Theater. His worn-out sneakers clashed violently with the glow of the professional lights. He should not have been there. Not like that. 5 minutes earlier, everything had been different. The Riverside Municipal School Choir was rehearsing its only song for the night's charity event. There were 20 poor children, dressed in simple white t-shirts, prepared to sing for 15 minutes and then disappear from the spotlight. The real show belonged to someone else. Dylan Cross. The name alone was worth millions. Pop singer, teenage idol, owner of mansions on 3 continents. His voice supposedly touched hearts around the world. His song Eternal Rise had won every possible award, especially because of that high note in the chorus, the note no one could replicate. The impossible note. The boy on stage was named Liam Torres. He lived in a 2-room apartment with his mother and 2 younger siblings. He woke up at 5 in the morning to help his mother with deliveries before school. His clothes for the event had been borrowed from a neighbor. But Liam possessed something money could not buy: absolute pitch, capable of identifying every frequency, every flaw, every lie hidden in a melody. During rehearsal, while Dylan Cross was supposedly warming up his voice backstage, Liam noticed something strange. The notes coming from the speakers during the soundcheck did not match the lip movements he had observed earlier, when the famous singer had crossed the stage talking on the phone. There was a minimal desynchronization, imperceptible to ordinary ears. But Liam did not have ordinary ears. He didn't say anything to anyone. Who would believe a poor boy questioning a superstar? But his expression must have revealed something, because Dylan Cross looked directly at him during the soundcheck, and that look carried something disturbing. It was not curiosity. It was recognition. And then contempt. What happened next shocked everyone. Dylan Cross interrupted the choir rehearsal with exaggerated clapping, drawing the attention of the entire production. He walked onto the stage with his perfect TV commercial smile, the one that appeared on billboards and magazine covers. But his eyes were cold. "You're amazing, kids," Dylan said into the microphone, his amplified voice echoing through the empty theater. "But you know what would make this even more special? A solo. A brave child singing my most famous song, showing that talent has no limits." He scanned the choir with his eyes and stopped on Liam. "You. The skinny kid in the corner. Come here." The music teacher tried to intervene, but Dylan had already grabbed Liam by the arm, positioning him at the center of the stage. The technical crew looked confused. This wasn't in the script. But when Dylan Cross decided something, everyone obeyed. "Let's do it like this," Dylan announced to the crew and the few people present at the rehearsal. "Tonight, during my show, I'll call this kid onto the stage. He'll sing Eternal Rise alone, no help, no backing track. Just his raw voice and the truth. What do you think?" He looked at Liam with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You can do it, can't you? Or are you going to prove that some notes really are impossible for ordinary people?" The humiliation was clear to everyone. Dylan was not offering an opportunity. He was preparing a public execution. He would expose a poor boy in front of thousands of people, making him fail while trying to reach the impossible note, the one supposedly mastered only by Dylan Cross. The message was simple: know your place. Liam felt his blood run cold. His mother would be in the audience that night. She had missed work, losing a day's pay, just to see him sing for 15 minutes with the choir. Now he would have to stand alone, in front of thousands of strangers, and attempt something he had never even practiced. "So," Dylan pressed, his smile widening, "do you accept the challenge, or are you going to admit you're not ready?" All eyes were on Liam. The silence was deafening. He could feel the teacher's anxiety, the discomfort of the technical crew, Dylan's cruel expectation. There was only one possible answer for a boy who had nothing to lose except his dignity. "I accept," Liam said, his voice coming out firmer than he felt. Dylan blinked, surprised for only a second. Then his smile turned into something predatory. "Perfect. See you tonight, kid. Don't disappoint your audience." Now, hours later, Liam was there. Alone under the spotlights, facing 3,000 people, about to be humiliated by the most powerful man on the stage. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave a comment saying what you thought and which city or country you're watching from. The orchestra began to play. Dylan Cross occupied the center of the stage as if he owned the universe. His white suit reflected the lights as he gestured dramatically to the audience, who applauded him with religious fervor. He was a master at controlling crowds, at making thousands of people feel exactly what he wanted them to feel. "Tonight is about hope," Dylan proclaimed, his perfectly modulated voice echoing through the speakers. "It's about giving opportunities to those who never had them. That's why I brought someone special." He extended his hand toward Liam with a magnanimous gesture. "This young talent from Riverside Municipal School is going to show us that dreams have no limits." The audience applauded politely. Liam felt his legs shaking. From the wings, he could see the worried face of the music teacher and the pitying looks from his choir classmates. His mother was somewhere down there, probably not understanding what was happening. "Liam is going to sing my song Eternal Rise," Dylan continued, and the audience erupted in excited cheers. But here's the interesting detail. He made a calculated pause. He's going to sing completely live. No backing tracks, no studio tricks. Just pure voice. "Because that's how I always sing, right?" The crowd roared in approval. Dylan Cross was known for his flawless live performances. At least, that was what everyone believed. He walked over to Liam and placed a hand on his shoulder, squeezing hard enough to be uncomfortable. "In fact," Dylan said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial tone that still reached every corner of the theater through the microphone, "I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to sing along with him, but without my main microphone. I'll use just a regular microphone, the same as his. Everything fair, everything transparent." He looked directly at Liam. "Are you ready to keep up with me on the most famous note of the song?" Liam recognized the trap immediately. Dylan was creating a situation where, when the boy failed, it would look even more pathetic next to the supposed perfection of the famous singer. But there was something else in that look, something Liam had noticed during rehearsal. Dylan was nervous. Sweating more than the lights would justify. "Before we start," Liam said, his voice coming out low but clear through the microphone, "can I ask a question?" Dylan frowned, clearly not expecting that. "Of course, kid. It's your big night." During rehearsal, I noticed something interesting in the sound system. There were two tracks playing at the same time. One was the instrumental music. The other, Liam paused, feeling the weight of 3,000 eyes on him. The other sounded like a vocal track, very low, almost imperceptible. Could the sound technician check that now live? Dylan's smile froze. For a fraction of a second, his face showed genuine panic before he recomposed his mask of confidence. What a creative imagination. That's exactly the kind of thinking that makes children so special. He laughed, but the sound was forced. Of course there are no hidden vocal tracks. That would be artistic fraud. But something had shifted in the energy of the theater. Some members of the audience whispered to each other. Backstage, one of the technicians grabbed a tablet and began urgently checking something. The show's executive producer appeared in the wings, speaking rapidly into his radio. "Let's put an end to this childish speculation," Dylan said, his voice now tense. "Technician, can you turn off all playback systems? I want only live instruments and our microphones. Nothing else." He looked at Liam with blazing eyes. Satisfied? Liam didn't answer. He was watching Dylan's face, the way the famous singer swallowed hard, how his fingers tapped nervously against his thigh. All those signs Liam had learned to read on the streets of his neighborhood, where survival meant knowing when someone was bluffing. The music began. It was a live orchestral version of Eternal Rise, performed by the musicians backstage. Beautiful, perfect, but without any recorded vocal support. Dylan started singing first, demonstrating to the audience how the song was supposed to sound. His voice was good, professional, well-trained. But something was missing, something that didn't match the recordings Liam had listened to hundreds of times. When it was Liam's turn, he closed his eyes and simply sang. His voice was raw, without the polish of years of professional lessons, but there was truth in it. There was genuine emotion from someone who knew struggle, who woke up at 5 in the morning to help his mother, who had never had anything handed to him. The audience grew quiet. It wasn't the polite silence from the beginning. It was the silence of people genuinely impressed. Liam's voice had something Dylan's recordings never had, authenticity. And then the moment arrived. The impossible note. The final chorus where the voice had to rise to a register that defied ordinary human anatomy. Dylan positioned himself beside Liam, his microphone raised, ready to prove his superiority. Together, Dylan said, but sweat was running down his forehead. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Dylan opened his mouth, his throat tensing with visible effort. What came out was adequate, professional, but far from the legend. He reached a high note, but not the impossible note. Not the one that had made the song famous. Liam, on the other hand, kept rising. His voice passed the register Dylan had reached and continued, clear and powerful, until it hit exactly the frequency that had made Eternal Rise legendary. The same note that supposedly only Dylan Cross could sing. Except Dylan Cross clearly was not singing that note. He had stopped completely, his microphone still raised, his mouth open in genuine shock as he listened to a poor 12-year-old boy do what he had never been able to do. The theater exploded. Not in applause, but in confusion. People shouted, pointed, pulled out their phones to record. Backstage, the executive producer was visibly shaken, gesturing frantically. Dylan Cross regained his composure with the speed of someone who had spent his entire life building a false image. His smile returned, forced but convincing to those who didn't know how to read between the lines. He applauded Liam with exaggerated enthusiasm, turning his own humiliation into staged generosity. Incredible! Dylan exclaimed, hugging Liam in a way that seemed affectionate but was clearly possessive. Just look at this. This boy has a bright future. This is exactly why I do charity events, to discover talents like this. He waved to the audience, redirecting their attention. Let's give a round of applause to Liam Torres. The crowd applauded, but there was uncertainty in the air. Many continued whispering to one another, reviewing the videos they had just recorded on their phones. Dylan noticed the hesitation and acted quickly, signaling the technical crew to cut Liam's microphone. Thank you, Liam. That was wonderful, Dylan said, gently but firmly pushing the boy toward the backstage area. Now I'll continue the show alone. You were sensational. But Liam didn't move. He remained at the center of the stage, holding the microphone that had been cut. His eyes met Dylan's, and there was something in that look that made the famous singer take an involuntary step back. You didn't sing the note, Liam said, loud enough to be heard even without amplification. His voice echoed through the silent theater. You never did. Not today, not on the original recording. Dylan laughed, but the sound came out strained. Kid, you're nervous. That's understandable. Your first time on a stage this big. I have absolute pitch, Liam interrupted, and now his voice carried something that hadn't been there before. Anger. I recognize frequencies, timbres, patterns. The voice on the recording of Eternal Rise isn't yours. It has a different texture, a resonance that comes from female vocal cords, not male ones. And today you proved that live. The theater fell completely silent. All conversations stopped. 3,000 pairs of eyes fixed on Dylan Cross, waiting for his response. Phone cameras recorded every second. Backstage, the production crew stood frozen, unsure how to intervene. Dylan Cross felt the world collapse around him. Years of carefully constructed image, millions spent on marketing, an entire career sustained by a monumental lie. All threatened by a poor boy who possessed the one gift money could not buy, the ability to hear the truth. He tried one last time. This is ridiculous. You're a child making serious accusations against a liar, a female voice cut through the air. Everyone turned. A woman of about 40 was walking onto the stage via the side stairs. She was elegant, simply dressed but with a presence that commanded attention. Her face was unknown to most, but some of the older musicians backstage recognized her immediately. My name is Elena Vasquez, she said, taking a microphone from one of the stunned technicians. And I am the real voice of Eternal Rise. The audience erupted into confused shouts. Dylan Cross visibly paled, all the blood draining from his face. He staggered backward, looking for his security team, his lawyers, anyone who could get him out of that situation. Elena continued, her voice calm but firm. 7 years ago, I was hired as a studio vocalist. My job was to sing the difficult parts Dylan couldn't perform. I signed non-disclosure agreements, I was paid to stay silent. But tonight, seeing this brave boy expose the truth, I realized I've been complicit in a fraud for far too long. She walked over to stand beside Liam, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. This boy has more integrity at 12 years old than many of us will have in an entire lifetime. He risks everything to tell the truth, while I spent years hiding it for money. You signed a contract. Dylan finally found his voice, pointing an accusing finger at Elena. This is a breach of contract. I'll sue you until... Until what? Elena interrupted him. Until I have nothing left? I already have nothing, Dylan. You kept the credits, the awards, the millions. I kept scraps and shame. But today that ends. One of the sound technicians backstage, a gray-haired man who had worked in the industry for decades, walked to the center of the stage carrying a laptop. His expression was grim. My name is Robert Chun, he announced. I've been the chief sound engineer of this theater for 20 years. With management's permission, I've just analyzed the original recordings of Eternal Rise in our professional archive system. He turned the laptop to show waveform graphs to the audience. The spectral analysis confirms it. The voice on the impossible note belongs to a woman, not to Dylan Cross. The harmonic frequencies are unequivocal. Dylan staggered as if he had been punched. His security team finally reached the stage, surrounding him, creating a physical barrier between him and the rest of the world. But there was no barrier capable of protecting him from what was happening. Hundreds of phones were broadcasting that moment live. Social media was already exploding with hashtags. Journalists in the audience typed frantically on their devices. The lie Dylan had so carefully cultivated for years was collapsing in minutes, transmitted in real time to the entire world. Liam watched everything with a mix of fear and something like satisfaction. He hadn't planned this. He had only told the truth, and the truth had created a chain reaction impossible to contain. Elena Vasquez knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. You gave me the courage to do what I should have done years ago. But while the truth was being revealed on stage, something sinister was moving backstage. Dylan Cross's personal lawyer, a man in a dark suit with a calculating expression, was already on the phone with half a dozen different people. His eyes locked onto Liam with the coldness of someone who saw not a child, but a problem to be eliminated. The war was just beginning. The following 48 hours were hell for Liam Torres. The video of the confrontation went viral globally, reaching 200 million views in less than a day. His name was in every headline, his face on every news broadcast. But fame brought something he had never imagined: systematic destruction. The morning after the event, Liam's mother received a phone call. It was her boss, telling her she was fired. No formal explanation, just company changes. 30 minutes later, the owner of the apartment where they lived showed up in person with an eviction notice. Structural problems that needed to be resolved immediately, according to him. Problems that had never existed before. At school, it was worse. The principal called Liam and his mother in for an urgent meeting. With an embarrassed expression, he explained that major donors had threatened to cut funding if the boy remained enrolled. The school depended on those donations to survive. Liam had 1 week to find another institution. They're just coincidences, Liam's mother kept repeating, but her hands trembled as she held the eviction and dismissal notices. She knew the truth. Everyone knew. Dylan Cross was using his power and money to destroy the family of a 12-year-old boy. Social media split violently. Millions supported Liam, sharing hashtags of support. But millions of others, fanatical supporters of Dylan, turned the boy into a public enemy. Conspiracy theories spread. Liam was a hired actor. Everything was staged to destroy Dylan. The family just wanted money. Fake accounts bombarded Liam's social media with threats. His address was leaked online. Strangers appeared in front of the building, some to support, others to shout obscenities. The family could no longer leave the house without facing cameras, microphones, or hostility. On the afternoon of the second day, a black car stopped in front of the building. 3 men in suits got out. The lead one was Dylan Cross's lawyer, carrying an expensive leather briefcase. He demanded an immediate meeting with the Torres family. Seated in the small living room, the lawyer opened the briefcase with calculated movements. My client is willing to make a generous offer, he said, his voice cold and professional. $500,000 in cash. A full scholarship at a top-tier private school. A fully paid apartment in an upscale neighborhood. A lifetime job for Mrs. Torres at one of our companies. Liam's mother swallowed hard. That money would change everything. Her children would have a future education, opportunities she could never provide. Her hands trembled as she imagined not having to wake up at 5 in the morning, not having to work 3 jobs to pay the bills. In return, the lawyer continued, Liam will make a public statement. He will say he was mistaken, that his analysis was wrong, that Dylan Cross really sings all his songs. Elena Vasquez will be discredited as an opportunist. The sound engineer will be exposed as incompetent. The story dies here today now. The silence in the room was suffocating. The lawyer placed the papers on the worn table, next to an expensive pen. You have 1 hour to decide. After that, the offer expires and the consequences intensify. We've already spoken with judges, prosecutors, immigration authorities. We can make your lives very, very difficult. Liam's mother looked at her son. Tears streamed silently down her face. She was broken, torn between protecting her child and doing what she knew was right. $500,000. A lifetime of problems solved. All she had to do was ask her 12-year-old son to lie. Liam held his mother's hand. No, he said, his voice firm despite the visible fear in his eyes. I won't lie. Liam, his mother whispered, it's a lot of money. We could. I know, Mom, Liam interrupted gently. I know you're tired. I know we deserve better. But if I lie now, Elena goes back into obscurity. Everyone else Dylan deceived stays deceived. And I'll have to live knowing I sold the truth for money. The lawyer sighed, closing the briefcase. A foolish decision. Very foolish. He stood up, straightening his suit. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Dylan Cross has friends everywhere. You'll regret this. But before he could leave, the doorbell rang. Liam's mother opened the door and found Elena Vasquez, accompanied by Robert Chun, the sound engineer, and 3 more people Liam didn't immediately recognize. We heard about the visit, Elena said, looking directly at the lawyer with disdain. And we brought reinforcements. One of the people stepped forward. It was a woman of about 50, carrying several folders. My name is Patricia Hughes. I'm a lawyer specializing in artistic rights and whistleblower cases in the music industry. I represent Elena free of charge, and I will now also represent Liam. Dylan's lawyer paled. Patricia Hughes was a legend in legal circles, known for taking down powerful executives and exposing corporate fraud. Her presence completely shifted the balance of power. Additionally, Robert Chin added, 4 other sound engineers from different studios independently analyzed the recordings. All reached the same conclusion. We have irrefutable technical documentation. One of the men with Elena introduced himself. I'm Vincent Park, a music producer who worked on 2 of Dylan Cross's albums. I can testify that he was never able to sing certain notes live. We always used studio vocals recorded by other singers. I have emails, contracts, evidence. Dylan's lawyer tried to maintain his composure, but he was visibly shaken. That changes nothing. My client has unlimited resources to bribe authorities. Patricia cut in. Because we've just filed formal complaints with recordings of this conversation about coercion, extortion, and threats against a minor. I have copies being sent simultaneously to the Federal Prosecutor's Office, the Ethics Commission, and the international press. She turned to Liam and his mother. You are not alone. We will fight for you, and we will win. Dylan Cross may have money, but we have something more powerful, documented truth and credible witnesses willing to speak. The lawyer left without another word, his phone already ringing furiously. Outside, more cameras had arrived, but now it was different. Serious journalists, not just paparazzi. The story was slipping out of Dylan Cross's control. That night, 3 major television networks aired special reports. Leaked documents showed that Dylan had paid more than 20 studio singers throughout his career. None had been credited. All had signed non-disclosure agreements. The fraud was systematic, industrial, sustained for decades. Dylan Cross's empire was collapsing, not because of the accusation of a boy, but under the accumulated weight of years of lies finally exposed. And at the center of it all, Liam Torres stood firm, The poor boy who had the courage to tell the truth when all the adults around him chose silence. 3 months later, Liam was back on a stage. But this time, everything was completely different. There were no traps, no planned humiliation. Just a microphone, an audience genuinely interested, and the truth already revealed. The Grand Metropolitan Theater was packed again, but now for an event organized by Elena Vasquez and Patricia Hughes. It was a night of celebration for all the artists who had been silenced, exploited, or erased by the music industry. Liam was there not as a victim, but as a symbol of courage. Dylan Cross had disappeared from public life. His contracts were cancelled, his shows suspended indefinitely. Federal investigations revealed a network of fraud that went beyond music, involving tax evasion and money laundering. His lawyers were fighting to keep him out of prison. The man who had once seemed untouchable was now facing the real possibility of consequences. Elena Vasquez, on the other hand, was finally receiving the recognition she deserved. Record labels were competing for contracts with her. Her voice, hidden for so long, was now openly celebrated. She was set to release her first solo album in 2 months, with all proper credits. Liam's mother had secured a better job through contacts Patricia Hughes helped facilitate. It wasn't charity, it was a fair opportunity at a company that valued honesty. The eviction had been overturned by a judge who ruled the circumstances clearly retaliatory. The school publicly apologized and offered Liam a full scholarship, but he chose another institution, one that had supported him from the beginning. Vincent Park, the producer who testified against Dylan, became Liam's mentor. Not to turn him into a pop star, but to help him develop his genuine talent at his own pace. Liam took singing lessons twice a week, but he was still just a 12-year-old boy who woke up early to help his mother and played soccer with friends in his free afternoons. On the stage that special night, Liam was not alone. 17 other artists shared the space with him, all with stories of exploitation and silencing. There was a rapper whose lyrics had been stolen by a famous artist. A black guitarist whose solos had been credited to white musicians. A composer whose songs became worldwide hits without her name ever appearing once. When it was Liam's turn to sing, he chose not to perform Eternal Rise. That song carried too much pain, memories of humiliation and fear. Instead, he sang an original composition, something he had written in the weeks following the event that changed his life. It was simple, honest, about a boy who just wanted his voice to be heard. His voice was still raw, still carried the imperfections of youth and the lack of extensive professional training. But there was something in it that no expensive production could replicate: absolute truth. Every word came from a real place, from genuine experiences, from lived emotions. The audience didn't applaud politely. They stood in a standing ovation, not because Liam was perfect, but because he was real. In a world saturated with manufactured images and fabricated talent, there was something deeply moving about witnessing pure authenticity. After the show, backstage, Patricia Hughes gathered all the artists. "What we did here wasn't just exposing a fraudster," she said. "It was starting a conversation about how many voices are silenced, how many talents are exploited, how many truths are buried by money and power." Elena hugged Liam, tears in her eyes. "You saved me," she whispered. "Not just by giving me the courage to speak, but by reminding me that the truth is worth more than any amount of money." Robert Chun, the sound engineer, had created a foundation to help exploited artists find legal representation. Vincent Park was developing an independent platform where musicians could distribute their work without dishonest intermediaries. The change that began with a boy telling the truth on a stage was creating waves that were transforming the entire industry. Liam knew his life would never be completely normal again. There were scars from what his family had gone through, memories of threats and fear. But there was also something new, the certainty that he had made the right choice. He could have taken the money, lied, made everything easier for himself and his family. But he would have carried that lie forever. As he was leaving the theater, a young journalist asked Liam what he would say to other children who witnessed injustice but were afraid to speak out. Liam thought for a moment, remembering the terror he felt on that first stage, the pressure that followed, the sleepless nights worrying about his family. "The truth is scary," he finally replied. "Powerful people will try to silence you. They'll use money, threats, everything they can. But the truth also sets you free. And when you tell the truth, you discover you're not alone." Other people were waiting for someone brave enough to speak first. He looked at his mother, who stood proudly nearby. And sometimes, doing the right thing means things get harder before they get better. But they do get better. The truth always finds a way. That night, thousands of people watched clips of the event on social media. Comments came from dozens of countries, in different languages, all sharing similar stories of exploitation and silencing. The movement Liam unintentionally started was growing, turning into something bigger than he had ever imagined. Dylan Cross would never recover his career. His brand was permanently destroyed. But Liam's legacy would be different. Not as a destroyer of reputations, but as the boy who proved that power and money are no match for the truth when someone has the courage to speak it. Years later, when asked about that night at the Grand Metropolitan Theater, Liam would always say the same thing: "I just sang. The truth did all the rest." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment on what you thought. Write where you're watching from, your city or country. Your story of courage also deserves